Hey guys, welcome back to the DM's Journal Out of the Abyss for the D&D 5th edition campaign module, Out of the Abyss. This, I believe, is episode 6, and I'm Anthony, your DM, taking you through the epic journey of the Underdark with my intrepid band of heroes. So today we're back to using the computer for the video as opposed to our at the Players Club video I did where we had to use my phone. The computer is plugged in. The computer has no updates to do, so we should be free and clear in terms of getting this recorded and done in a fashion that does not make me want to pull all of my hair out. So that's a thing. But yeah, we had our play session last night, and I know that we did do at the Players Pub last time because we didn't have a session. So it's been 2 weeks since we played, which is the first time that that's happened to us. So it's been a bit of a long in between. As one of my players mentioned last night, it was like, "Hey, can I get an update on what happened?" I said, "Yeah. I mean, you could also just watch these videos." But I know that it can be time consuming, so I just gave the recap. And for the benefit of those who are maybe joining us into now for the first time, or if you yourself need a bit of a refresher, if you recall in the previous play session, the party had gone through the lost tomb of Cain and discovered a wraith and her specter subjects and had to do battle there. One of the party members almost died, as had the life sucked out of them by the wraith, but at the end of the day, part of the treasure that they found was actually a scroll of raised dead, which they were able to use to bring him back. And in addition to that, they found a really cool sentient sword that's basically, for all intents and purposes, a lightsaber. It's a hilt of a sword that can be activated into a blade of pure radiance that does all kinds of cool things. And it's its own character. It's sentient. And we didn't get too much roleplay out of the sword last night. Maybe once it came up. And I'm going to make an effort to start doing more roleplay for the sword. Dawnbringer is its name. And it has a very cool kind of attitude. It's got a female voice, but it's very stout. It has the almost like the lawful stupid personality of a paladin. Not that all paladins are lawful stupid, but if there were to be one that was lawful stupid, this sword is it. So it'll be interesting to see how that interacts with the characters. But where we left off last time was that they had done this tomb. They had made their way to the Greats of Gracklestugh, the Grey Dwarf city of blades, their first major center of population that they've encountered while being in the Underdark. And they had been briefed by some of their NPC traveling companions that, like, look, this is not a kind of place to screw around. The laws here are very strict, especially against foreigners. Grey dwarves have the ability to go invisible at will, and so there's very little crime because you never know who might be watching. And bottom line is that if you muck up and you're a foreigner, then not just the city guard, but any Duergar in the area is within their rights to just summarily execute you. So, this is not the place to be goofing around. So they kind of had that briefing. And their Grey Dwarf companion, Hemeth, who they rescued in Slooploodop, kind of fulfilled his part of the bargain and got them through the city gates and was like, okay, see ya. Like, I don't owe anything else to you, and I don't want to have anything else to do with you. Here's the name of a bar you can go to and buy. And I think this was not the first time they would have heard, or rather, this was the first of many times they heard the name of this bar, especially in last night's session, the Gollabron's Lair, I believe it's called, which translate, if you're familiar with your D&D monsters, there's something called a bullet or a land shark, which is basically this really nasty monster that can travel around underground and comes up. And anyways, that's what Gollabron is, like the Great Dwarf or Dwarvish tongue for that. And so this is like the one in the entire city where foreigners are allowed to stay. In fact, the first thing they learned when they got into the city is that they were escorted by guard into the Dark Lake district, which is the part of the city that obviously touches the Dark Lake, where the docks are. And that is the only area of the city where foreigners are permitted to be without an escort. That's the only area of the town that they're really allowed to be in. So they were escorted there, and that inn is in the Dark Lake area, and that was basically the only location they were told of. But the first thing that the party wanted to do, and the first kind of thing I threw out to them is like, well, do you guys want to do shopping? Because this is the first time ever that you've actually hit a place of commerce. So you can sell off some of the knickknacks that you've been finding. You can buy various things that you might be after, and part of what the DM guide actually tells you is it says, look, this is the City of Blades is renowned for its commerce and its smithing. Really, it's smithing, and like when they walk into the city, it gives this description that the air is thick and hot, and you always are hearing the clanging of hammers, and the air above you is just a smog of smoke and kind of the red din of the flames of the forges up into the ceiling, that kind of thing. So a very cool kind of atmosphere. One of the things I actually did to try and because I always like to try and do something physical to immerse players. I think previously I might have spoken about how I would use colored LED lights rather than just regular lights to give the idea of you are underground and it is dimly lit, and it's just the purple and greens and blues of glowing mushrooms and that kind of thing. So one of the things I did last night is my chandelier right above us, because this is where we play right here, my chandelier is on a dimmer. So I actually just left the regular light bulbs in there and just dimmed it down so it was like a dim orange. And then what I actually did is I took a cigar I had, like a big stogie, and I just lit the cigar, and I had the cigar kind of create a haze in the room, especially because in the players, I'm not even going to bring it up, but there's something that might happen to the players that this would actually be a great sub for, and I'm sure that's going to come up in a next session. So stay tuned for episode 7, where you're going to hear all about what might happen to them in that regard. But I did that to kind of give the effect, and they thought it was pretty cool, so that was neat. So I said, yeah, you have an opportunity now to shop. The book says that any non-magical arms or armor can be purchased in Gracklestugh because they are just renowned smithies. So they said, okay, so they did some bartering and stuff, and what they started to notice as they were interacting with various shopkeepers is that there was definitely something strange going on, and it took them a little while to catch on. They thought maybe people were screwing with them, or I was doing something weird as part of the person bartering with them. But they actually had a decent amount of treasure, and they shouldn't. Just because it helps to reinforce the idea that, not everything is readily available to you here. So there was a couple items that they wanted, like Ken LaFlaunt, our resident bard, wanted a light crossbow so he could do some ranged attacks rather than just having to rely on spell casting or moving in and getting a stomp. The paladin, Sir Robert, wanted to buy some full plate armor. I was like, okay, that's within your means, that type of stuff. And then our monk Uta, we were missing Bard, the half orc, last night, the half orc barbarian. She wasn't able to make it to the session. She's on vacation, so hope she's having fun. Maybe she'll watch this in a different country. Probably not. But they wanted Uta the monk and Colby, our warlock. They both were looking for they're like magical things like healing potions and scrolls and stuff like that. I said, yeah, you're not really having good luck finding that kind of thing in just it's called the blade market, I think it's called. And so you're not really finding anything, but all this other stuff you're having an easy time finding. But they were noticing odd little things. So the first shopkeep they went to, he just would turn invisible and visible on and off again while talking to them, and not really noticing it. And they're kind of like, what are you, why are you gone? And he would be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no room for nonsense from surfacers. Get what you want and get out. There was that kind of an idea. And so they're like, okay. So and I was gouging them on prices. And I don't know if they recognize that or not, because we do have a couple veteran players at the table. But for example, it would be like, okay, your full plate rather in the book is listed at 1,500. And I was like, okay, $2,000. That's an extra 500 gold on top of that. And they bartered and they did some trading. Said, okay, give me all your chain shirts and leather armor that you kind of stole from the drow. I'll knock 200 off the price, and you owe me 1,800 gold. And I said, well, let us think about it. So they went and they visited the next, the store on the other side kind of thing. I think we called it the Black Ram Forge or something like that. And they went in there. And this guy, wasn't turning invisible, but he kept changing the price during negotiations, both up and down, and then accusing the players of being the ones to change the price and getting frustrated and kicking them out. And so the players are like, what is happening? This is weird. And then what they just observed was there's even other commerce, like other, what's the word I'm looking for? Not marketers, other shopkeepers, will say, who are haggling with other people, other races, and they were noticing like one guy was being very insulting and demeaning to his customer who wanted to buy something from him. And then as soon as the customer wanted to sell something to him, he became very polite, which is, kind of backwards, right? Like you might haggle the other way. So they're noticing this stuff, and they started to put some pieces together and say, oh, like maybe these people are weird like this, and you just have to be really rude with them and firm with them so that they don't change the prices around. So this is what Ken tried. Is he went up and basically insulted the guy. And I really liked what I did with it is, so he insulted him and said, oh, you're going to give me this for this much, and that's the end of it, and you're an idiot, and blah, blah, blah. And the dwarf kind of said, okay, and started putting armor out onto the table. And he says, I want you to pay specific attention to this, and lifts up this armored gauntlet. And he says, this armored gauntlet is very special. It has the ability to, when you grip a shield, it will never let go. Let me demonstrate. And he puts the armored gauntlet on, and he says, do you see this mechanism? And then slaps Ken across the face with the armored gauntlet and basically says, never talk to me that way again, or, I'll kill you myself. And everyone kind of got a bit of a laugh out of that, and that was just I thought, some cool role play to really distinguish the idea that these, the Grey Dwarves are pretty dour, serious folk, and so it is especially strange that you're seeing some of the weird behavior from them that you're seeing. And, eventually, I think later down the line, they were putting together the idea of like, oh, well, this almost seems like madness. Like maybe the madness of the demons have even started to creep into this stronghold of a city. So eventually they made their purchases and they completed their shopping. And just as they were doing that, there is an encounter that happens where basically this big gray-skinned stone giant smashes through the district gates, and he's grown a second head, and he's just kind of crazy and screaming, and the characters are like, well, we got to deal with that. So they jumped in and they started fighting, and the Duergar dwarves were helping them out, and they took it down fairly easily. I mean, there was only the one giant, but it could have gone sideways. The giant has, probably we'll call it medium AC, a decent pool of hit points, but the dwarves were just automatically dealing 10 points at the end of every combat round. And the giant doesn't come with any immunities, which I was kind of surprised that, as a stone giant, that maybe he would at least have resistance to piercing or something like that. But whatever, they did their job, and I think the stone giant wound up landing a couple hits, and even just those couple hits almost downed two of the party or one and a half of the party kind of thing. So I mean, the rolls went pretty well for them, and it was fine. So they dealt with the giant, and then a second giant comes through with just one head, and he looks like he's actually got his stuff together, and he comes over and looks at the body and talks to the sergeant of the captain, or the sergeant of the dwarven guard who were there fighting, and basically says, hi, my name is Dorhun, and this was Rehud, and we were both he was an apprentice to Stone Speaker Hagram, who is like our leader of the conclave of stone giants that live in this city, and we're so sorry that you had to deal with this. And I've spoken to the sergeant, and he told me the good that you did in kind of helping put an end to his suffering and madness, and we would just appreciate it if before you left the city, come stop by the Cairngrom Grove or cave where we reside, and we'll show our thanks more appropriately. And then just kind of left. And then on top of that, the sergeant said, well, thanks for your help. I think that you should come with me to Overlake Hold, which is like the stronghold of the city kind of thing. And you need to speak with my captain. And the party kind of said, okay. So they went, and they were escorted into the fortress, and as they came in, the doors kind of swing open behind them, and in walks this female drow, and like four other male drow following her, and she basically makes this big scene and says, these people, these surfacers and their companions are stolen, escaped slaves are the property of my mistress and her house, and I demand you return them to me. And the sergeant's just kind of like, look, elf, I don't care if they're lost property. Right now, we're dealing with them. So if you want them back, either way, you would have to pay us a finder's fee, and you can negotiate that one with my captain. And so now they're in this weird situation where they've come to the fortress of their own accord because the captain wanted to speak with them, or the sergeant figured she would. But at the same time, now they're also been identified as escaped slaves. And even like all of the Grey Dwarf society operates in a slave economy. So they're like, whatever. So they now toss them in a cell until the captain's ready to talk to them. So they're waiting around, and eventually they get escorted to the captain's chamber, and it's this female Grey Dwarf named, I think, Erde Blackskull. And she basically says, look, you're worth nothing here. Me and my men would sell you off as the cheapest labor at the drop of a hat. But, I've learned in my time as captain that there are more useful ways to deal with adventurers such as yourself, aka I'm gonna put you to work. And they're like, well, this dark elf, like, how do you even know? And she's like, honestly, guys, you look like you've been through hell. You're like emaciated almost. Like, it's pretty obvious that if she says you're escaped slaves, you probably are. However, I don't care what she says. I have a job for you. And she basically says, I think that there's something going on in the city. I don't know if it's corruption or what. I think that it involves the Darrow. It's an issue, and solving such an issue would definitely earn me great favor with the Deep King, which is basically the king of Gracklestugh. And so she says, there's this Darrow running around called Droki, and somehow, invisible or not, he's able to evade all of our patrols, and we haven't been able to get our hands on him. I want you to track him down and report back on his dealings. I don't care if you kill him, or you bring him back, or you just get me evidence. I want to know what's going on. And they're like, well, okay, maybe. What's in it for us, kind of thing. And she's like, well, if you don't want to work for me, I could always just sell you to the Drow. Either way, the coffers of the Deep King are going to be repaid. And so they said, well, I guess we don't have much of a choice on that one. So they jumped on board that plan, and she said, I'll deal with the Drow. You take these insignias, and she basically handed them out all badges that are reflective of their status of kind of in the employ of the Stone Guard, which are like the king's elite guard. And she's like, don't run around with these things on your cloak or something, but if you need to get from one district to another, or guards are harassing you, just flash the badge and they'll understand that you're working for me. And they said, oh, that's neat, okay. So they left with kind of a new mission under their jacket, or under their belt jacket. Now Colby, whose character, the warlock, is a member of, like, his character background is that he's kind of like a high-ranking merchant, or he's a member of esteem of the Merchants Guild, and so he's like, oh my god, a place of commerce, like perhaps my merchant guild has a guild office here. And I said, well, what's the name of your guild? And he said, oh, it's the Order of the Golden Serpent. And it's like, okay, yeah, that works for me. So they go and they investigate, and they kind of go down to an office that has that insignia on a plaque on the wall, and they go in, and there's one dwarf, female dwarf, sitting there. And this is a character that the book gives you, and I just kind of said, okay, well, rather than whatever she's supposed to be, she's going to be the representative of your guild here. It's a dwarf named Ilsa. And she basically says, oh, I've heard of you, actually, and yes, I do recognize that you're a member of the guild. The Poncho, the warlock's disturbing little kind of minion familiar, starts saying, hey, you should hit on her, because he's a horn dog. And I made him roll the wisdom check, and he failed, so he started hitting on her. But luckily, the dwarf was like, no, remember when I said I heard of you? Yeah, don't touch me because you're gross. So that was kind of fun. And basically said, no, we recognize you. Look, we don't have any lodgings here, but here's the name of the only place in town that'll take you. And again, it's that Gulbrun's lair. So he says, okay, well, at least it'll be free. Like, at least the guild will pay for it. And what I was really hoping, what the characters kind of seem to some regard have lost track of, because they're so caught up in the adventure of everything that keeps happening to them, is that, realistically, their goal is to get out of the Underdark. Like, they're basically trapped down here. They don't know how to get out, and they're learning. Like, even one of them said, after that giant attack, they're like, Jesus, is nowhere in the Underdark safe? And I was like, no, that's the point. This whole place is terrible, and you're not from here. You need to get out. But they didn't really key in on that, and I was really hoping that the idea they would be like, well, we should see how we can leave, like not just the city, but we should see if there's someone here who can get us back to the surface, because it's crazy down here and we want out. That didn't really come up, so I kind of maneuvered things, and they forced my hand a little bit to kind of say, okay, well, this because she kept asking, well, why are you here? Like, what's your business? What are you trying to do? And the idea was just like, oh, well, we're just, we've been traveling a long time and we need a place to stay. It's like, okay, but why? Like, are you here on guild business? Oh, well, I was, but I lost that shipment. It's like, okay, so what now? But it never came up. We're trying to leave the Underdark. So I was like, okay. So she said, but, well, since you're here anyways, and since I know who you are, you could actually help me out with something, and maybe, you scratch my back, I can scratch yours. And I said, okay, well, what's up? He said, well, and she grabs this box of treasure and dumps it out on her table, and it's just little trinkets and valuables and coins from all over Faerun, like all over the surface world. And she's like, this is weird. Like, these shouldn't be here. This is from all over the world, and I keep finding stuff in the city. And I've tracked these goods to basically certain Darrow who have been exchanging them for food. I don't it doesn't follow. Where are they coming from? She says, if you can kind of figure out where the Darrow are getting these, then I can reward you in some fashion, and we'll discuss what your reward is when you get the job done. And they were like, okay. And they kind of made a note of that. And that's one of the things I really liked about this session, what I am really going to enjoy about the time that the party spends in Gracklestugh, is that up until this point, the adventure has been very, oh my God, and this is happening, so we got to do this. And then, oh my God, this happened, and now we got to do that. And we got to get to this place. It's been very one-directional in terms of not what their options are, but just the task at hand. But now, being in a big city, meeting lots of different people and factions and yada, 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 is they're starting to accrue a little bit of what you would call a quest log, where they've got options of different jobs that people want them to look into and check out, and really giving them options in where they want to go and what they want to do and why. So that's been a big boon of this particular session that we had last night. Or I guess it's Tuesday. I'm used to doing these Mondays. I'm a bit late. Our session was on Sunday night, not on Monday. Yeah, so he said, yeah, that's great. So then their next thing that they want to do is said, well, we've been just on our feet and going. We should probably get to that inn. So they get to the inn, and they met kind of like a funny orcish bartender who didn't really have a good understanding of money. They got themselves some food and some drinks and just relaxed. And one of the key tropes of D&D is you're in an inn, and what I could ask you, maybe you're a player or a DM or not, whatever. If I said, what's one of the first things that comes to mind as a player when you're in an inn, in a city, in a game of D&D? And it's always that idea that you'll see in every video game. It's like, have you heard any rumors? Is there any work that needs to be done? Literally no one asked that question. And the book was geared towards, it wasn't super important, but it was hey, here's the rumor mill. Here's what they can find out if they snoop around. But no one ever did that. I guess they were just super tired and needed a drink and just to relax. So that's what they did. And so that was their little encounter there. And then when they had left Erde Blackskull, one of the things that she said upon their leaving was, I heard that the stone giants are looking to speak to you. It's not wise to keep them waiting too long, so make sure you do that. So after they had, spoken to the guild member, and after they had, gotten a little bit of, they didn't rest, they didn't actually do any kind of long or short rest, they just kind of got some food and some drink, booked their rooms, so to speak. And they left all their NPCs at the inn. I think that was their main goal. It's we don't want to cart these guys around with us right now. So they're just going to hang out at the inn while we take care of some to-dos. So they did that, and they said, well, I guess the next thing we should do is we should go to this Cairngorm cavern and speak to the stone giants. So that's what they did. So they went there, and kind of, the stone giants, much like the Duergar, are very kind of, stone-faced, I guess you'd say, very dour, and you can tell that they usher them into a kind of an abode that is a little bit more ceremonial, but not in an exquisite, high-ranking member of society type of way, but more like a spiritual reverence kind of way, because they were being introduced to the Stone Speaker, who is basically the shaman of these stone giants, and he basically, again, thanks them for what they did. and offers up to them a reward that is called, I think it's called the Stone Speaker's Shard, or Stone Speaker Crystal, or something like that. And basically it's this crystal rod that, when you have it on you, it gives you advantage on your investigation rolls, but also it has 10 charges that can be used to either speak with plants, speak with animal, or speak with dead. So that's kind of neat. So they got this, and that was their little reward. And then before they left, the Stone Speaker had kind of like a portent for them, like almost like a vision that he described, basically saying like, things are crazy right now. The stone tells me that not everything's right, and I'm seeing visions of a cave with two faces, and the land being overgrown, and this, that, and the other thing. And the party, for like, because they did this with Erde Blackskull as well, they're like, yeah, no, nothing is okay. We saw Demigorgon. And every time they say that, the people are like Demigorgon, like the Prince of Demons. And I asked them to take a persuasion check, because, this would be like if you walked into somewhere like, guys, everything's not okay. I just saw the devil walking down Main Street. And they'd be like, right, So, but the thing that, not really a problem, but what was funny is they kept rolling like close or on natural 20s for their persuasion check. So it was like the end result was that he would say this to the Stone Speaker and to the captain of the Stone Guard, and they would be like, oh, yeah, that is really concerning, especially with some of the things I've been kind of seeing happen in and around the city. I must meditate on this, or I must make preparation for this, or whatever. But, the characters are not going to get a reaction that is, whoa, you saw the Prince of Demons walking around? Well, then we join our banner to yours. It's like, no, that's not going to happen. It's just more of like that is very concerning that you would say that you saw that. So I'll have to kind of take your word for it and, take it under advisement. So that was more the reaction they got. But, so the Stone Speaker said, yes, I must speak to the stone on this, and kind of ushered them out. And one thing I should note is that, Sunday was very roleplay heavy, less combat. You're really just a one encounter. And it was a shorter session just because for everyone's individual reasons, they were just very tired that night. So I didn't want to drag us out an extra hour of play when everyone's kind of at the table looking like this, not because they're not enjoying themselves, but just because they were exhausted. So I said, okay, so you leave the Cavern of the Stone Giants and you're approached by 5 Duergar that look way different than any of the ones that you've seen. They're wearing robes and hoods. They look very like part of a religious order. Their robes are black with like fiery red and orange embroidery around the edges and that kind of thing. And the lead one comes up to you and says, I am Gorkatar, and I am the leader, or I'm the emissary of the Keepers of the Flame. And I have been sent by Themberchode to basically ask you to come and have an audience with him. And they're like, what? Like, who are you people? Like, why is this? Who's Themberchode? Like that kind of thing. And so they said, well, we are kind of like his servants, and he is the great smith of the City of Blades. Like he is the keeper of the forges, basically. And they're like, oh, okay. And they're hemming and hawing, like, do we just kind of take these guys' word for it and go with them? And eventually one of the players was like, oh, I mean, these guys need us for something. Like, we should just go check out what it is. Like, what are we going to say? No, and just leave? So they said, okay, well, we'll at least come check it out. So they're led through to kind of like the main headquarters for the Keepers of the Flame. And they're led into a stone chamber. And the book gives this great description where they basically hear this voice kind of say like, oh, Gorkatar, you didn't say I was having surfacers for dinner tonight. And then they see this hulking red dragon come kind of out of the shadows, his scales the color of lava, his eyes glowing red in the dark. And, it specifically basically says that he looks overweight, is how well he's fed, which is a scary concept when you're walking into his lair. But he also follows it up of kind of like laughing at his own joke, and then the Gorkatar, the guy who brought them there, basically says, introducing, the keeper, of the forge, the great wormsmith of Gracklestugh. This is, his eminence Themberchode. And then that's where we just left it. We just left it there so that, it's kind of an exciting endpoint. The characters have a few kind of to-dos written in their journal, so to speak. They got some shopping done. They did a fight, and killing the stone giant was enough for them to level up to level 4. So everyone kind of is going to get to do that and get a little bit of a boost. And now they have to look forward to sitting down at our next play session in the audience of a red dragon, which is pretty interesting. And we're going to see what the red dragon Themberchode has to say and what he wants of the party. And there's a really interesting dynamic that happens within the city with the Keepers of the Flame and Themberchode and all that kind of thing. So I'm excited to get to that. But yeah, that was in a nutshell our shorter session from Sunday night. Everyone seemed to kind of enjoy what they got to do, and I think we ended it at an appropriate time. I didn't want it to drag out so people wouldn't be having fun, and I think that for our Sunday session coming up that we should have this Sunday is Easter Sunday, so actually I think that will probably be out of commission. So we won't be able to do Saturday because there's actually a Star Wars Legion tournament that's happening at our store, and so we're going to be doing that. And unfortunately, I do not get the Monday off because I'm not a government employee, and Friday is Good Friday, and we celebrate that. So realistically, what I'm saying is it will be 2 weeks until we have another play session, but that might mean that this weekend I'll make a point to do another Players Pub with 2 other members of my party. I'm going to try and rope in probably Colby, our Warlock, as well as our Paladin, Sir Robert. And you can get their take on things, and we'll have a fun discussion. Like I said, we'll try and do this one maybe actually over a beer or something at night. Stick more to the pub theme than the coffee theme, but we'll see what happens. But anyways, thank you for watching. Sorry it's been a little while since there was a content update. I do have a couple other things in the pipeline. I'm going to be shortly doing a video that just kind of analyzes some more stuff for Star Wars Legion, because again, that's kind of the new hotness right now, and I know that a lot of people have been liking the videos I do there, so I want to keep putting that out. I've had an opportunity to play and do some list building now, so I have some more informed opinions, at least on the Imperial side of things, but I do have a couple buddies that play Rebels that I'd love to have as kind of guests on the show. I did that once before with Ryan, who is actually Sir Bastian, the Paladin, so you'll maybe see more of him, maybe some of our other players. But like I said, either way, thank you for watching this episode of DM's Journal, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you next time.